Welcome to Manna at the Tap, a podcast from Tapestry Ministries. Each episode reflects on a daily Bible reading from the Revised Common Lectionary. I'm Gloria, a fellow traveler on a spiritual journey with the Tapestry community, and we refer to the daily Bible reading as our spiritual manna. It nourishes our souls, fostering spiritual growth as we share insights and interpretations that enrich our spiritual lives. Today is Wednesday, August 27th, 2025, in the 11th week after Pentecost during this season of ordinary time. This is a time for us to live an extraordinary disciplined life as we experience spiritual growth. The lectionary reading is from the New Testament book of the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6. There was an ongoing conflict between Jesus and the Pharisees, who acted as the religious police of his time. The Pharisees were a Jewish religious movement formed during a time when the people lived under foreign occupation, and their Jewish faith and way of life were at risk. The Pharisees believed that in addition to the written Torah, an oral Torah was given to Moses by God and passed down through generations. The oral Torah helped interpret the written Torah, allowing people to apply its teachings to their daily lives. Observing the Sabbath was a recurring source of conflict between the Pharisees and Jesus. They constantly looked for any breach of the oral law. In contrast to Jesus' two commandments, which were to love the Lord your God with all of your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, the Pharisees had established a system of 613 laws. 365 of them were negative commands, and only 248 of them were positive laws. Luke chapter 6 begins with a story about the Pharisees watching Jesus' disciples walking through a grain field and picking heads of grain on the Sabbath. The Pharisees saw this as work and asked why they were breaking the law and working on the Sabbath. Jesus reminded them that when David and his band of warriors were fleeing from King Saul and living in the desert, they were hungry. David went looking for bread for them, and he entered a small town and asked the priest if there was any ordinary bread available because he and his men were famished. The priest told David that all he had was the bread that was only supposed to be eaten by priests, and he offered it to David, who shared it with his men. Jesus then told the Pharisees that the Sabbath is meant to be life-giving, not a slave master that is unresponsive to human needs. The lectionary reading covers verses 6 to 11 of Luke chapter 6. It is another Sabbath, and this time Jesus is teaching in the local synagogue. His eyes fall on a man with a shriveled right hand. The Pharisees and other religious leaders are watching Jesus closely, waiting to see what he will do. They're looking for a reason to accuse him of breaking the law again concerning the Sabbath. Jesus asked the man to stand before the entire crowd. Then Jesus turned to the Pharisees and asked them a question. Is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath? To save a life or to destroy it? There was no response from the Pharisees to Jesus' question. Jesus then told the man to go ahead, stretch out your hand. The man obeyed, and his hand was completely healed. The Pharisees had tried to safeguard the Sabbath by imposing many restrictions. Jesus clarified that God gave the Sabbath as a gift, a time for us to stop and disconnect from the endless demands of daily life, a time to find rest in God's presence. Observing the Sabbath is meant to be life affirming, not life draining.